University. Additional funding is provided by the North Carolina Nursery and Landscape Association and the North Carolina Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, presenting TarHeelGardening.com, your online gardening resource for North Carolina plants, professional advice, and more. And by Appalachian Naturescapes, custom landscape designs specializing in Blue Ridge native landscape themes, from intimate gardens to elaborate outdoor living spaces. AppalachianNaturescapes.com. Also by the North Carolina Sod Producers Association, representing sod growers throughout the state who produce quality turf grasses to meet a variety of residential, commercial, and recreational turf grass needs. ncsod.org.
Coming up, red, orange, and yellow. Oh my! Using color to spice up the landscape. Next. Hi, welcome to In the Garden. I'm Bryce Lane. When it comes to color in the garden, the options are limitless. This week, we'll look at color combinations that really click. And I'll show you how to create a bold, dramatic garden display using both colorful flowers and foliage. If you come to the J.C. Ralston Arboretum and you go behind the Nellie Stevens hedge, you'll find the bedding plant trials. Now this is Dr. Brian Whipker, Professor of Floriculture at NC State University's Department of Horticultural Science. Brian, could you tell us about the bedding plant trials and how they're organized?
Well, behind the hedge is the bedding plant trials, and the trials are organized by companies submitting entries, and then they're evaluated during the summer. So the advantage for homeowners and growers is to see which plants do the best during the entire summer, and they're evaluated on a weekly schedule by the technician, Bernadette Clark. And so we see which ones grow the best in North Carolina.
So it really gives a good indication of what plants are going to be the best for this region in the future, is that right?
Yes, that's kind of the idea. So, because every plant doesn't work in all locations. You know, a northeastern plant that needs cooler temperatures might do better there, but with our heat and humidity, we have a little different situation here, and so we can see which ones work the best.
Well, near the hanging baskets, I see a sign that says All America Selections. What is that program?
The All America Selections program is a more organized set of plants that's being evaluated at multiple locations throughout the U.S. And judges who are accredited will go through and evaluate those plants and see how well they grow. And then they bring all that data together from all the locations and then make selections that do pretty well throughout the entire U.S.
So it's a good standard then?
It's a good standard one, and it is repeated, whereas the other entries in this trial might be ones that companies submit that are better suited for our location.
Okay, so I know there's an annual event called the Landscape Color Field Day, and lots of people come. Tell us about that field day and what goes on.
That field day is organized primarily for professionals, greenhouse growers, and landscape maintenance people, although some master gardeners come and some advanced gardeners will also show up. And so the trial date is usually the second or third week in June. It's an all-day event. We first go through the garden. Everyone can look at the plant material. Ted Bilderback and the other people at the staff will go through and do a walking tour so you can see what looks good and what doesn't. And then in the afternoon we have speakers that go over different subject matter. And so it's a good all-in-one day event.
Oh, very good. Now as I walk through, I see a couple of beds and there's a little placard that says North Carolina Select. What is that?
There's a new program that's been launched, and we're looking at selecting out plants that are superior for the North Carolina area. And so with that NC Select program, these are really plants if you would drive around to different business parks and they have beds, these would be very likely the plants they will have in those beds. And the reason is those clients want plants that are going to last the entire season until they switch over to pansies. And so that NC Select program in the website has some information for both growers and consumers for some of those plants that they might want to grow in their own garden.
Okay, so that's what I was going to say. If I was a home gardener, the website would be where I could go to get information about those plants.
Yes.
Well, that sounds great. Well, now, folks, remember, when you come to the Ralston Arboretum, don't forget to go to the bedding plant trials because there's plenty of color here and great ideas for plants to put in your own landscape. Brian, thanks for sharing with us.
Thank you.
When you visit the bedding plant trial plots at the Ralston Arboretum, you're going to get some great ideas for plants that you can use in your own home garden. Now, one group of plants where there's a lot of work that's been done in the past 10 years are the coleus. Now, there are lots of different cultivars that you can choose for coleus to put in your landscape. Plants that will grow in partial shade, full shade, but the sun coleus are to die for. Take a look at some of these cultivars that are being displayed here that we really need to look for in the garden centers. This is a red leaf cultivar called Redhead. Now, Redhead is a wonderful plant because it grows only about 18 inches to 2 feet tall. It branches naturally very well. Beautiful dark red leaves. It's about the most red cultivar you'll find in the coleus. It's planted here in this trial bed, but also in a display bed as well. Now, the other good news is oftentimes coleus will produce a flower stalk, and we really don't want to have the flower stalk in the landscape because it needs to be deadheaded or picked out. Well, this cultivar, Redhead, flowers very, very late and sometimes doesn't flower at all. So that adds to the ease of maintenance for your landscape. Full sun to partial sun, and this plant's a winner for your landscape. Now, here's another one called Henna, and Henna is a fascinating variegated leaf with a margin that's somewhat convoluted. It's a wonderful cultivar, grows about 2 feet tall for full sun to partial sun. And for those of you who are looking for the yellow-leafed or the chartreuse-leafed coleus, this one's called Wasabi, and it has a really interesting texture and a great yellow to green-yellow color to incorporate in your landscape. Well, these are just a few of the many cultivars of coleus that you can choose. Be sure to check them out at the bedding plant trials. Well, if you have a hot, dry, full sun location, then portulaca would be a plant that you'd want to put in that area. They're low growing, they flower in the full sun, and they're very drought tolerant. Now, this cultivar is called Cupcake Grape Jelly. Now, what a great name, but if you look at the flowers, you can see that they're magenta colored, and the plant spreads out about 4 to 6 inches tall and about 12 to 15 inches wide. It makes a great mass planting, and here it is planted in a mixed bed in the NC Plant Select section. And so here's a plant that's been tried and tested, and one you really need to get in that full sun area of your garden. If you're looking for an annual ground cover with beautiful leaves, there are plenty of cultivars of ornamental sweet potato to choose from. But how about one that has a smaller leaf and is free flowering with that small morning glory-like flower? Well, this is a new cultivar that works well in a hanging basket and as a ground cover. This is Ipomea batatas Floramia Nero, a beautiful new cultivar of sweet potato. And look at the leaves. They're smaller, burgundy colored, dark green. Check out the venation, kind of a dark reddish burgundy color. And then here's one that flowers, a small lavender colored flower. The bumblebees love to go in and out of the flower, self-contained. These plants haven't been pruned, they're tight. You can use them as a ground cover in a full sun location, but this also makes a fantastic hanging basket. So look for this next spring at the garden centers as a great ornamental sweet potato with a little bit of a twist. There are many shrubs that contribute to color in the landscape, especially during the summertime. And one group that's my favorite are the hydrangeas, specifically Hydrangea paniculata, the panicle hydrangeas. Well, my favorite cultivar of panicle hydrangea is the cultivar Limelight, Hydrangea paniculata Limelight. Look at the flowers on this plant. It's beautiful, and it flowers right smack dab in the middle of the summertime. The flowers are relatively large, about 6 to 8 inches long and about 4 to 6 inches wide. Beautiful white sterile flowers when they're wide open, but as the flowers emerge, they're a lime green color. That's where it gets the name Limelight. Notice how this shrub grows about 4 to 6 feet tall and equally as wide. Here I've got it growing in about full sun. It gets about 6-7 hours of full sun right here, but it'll even tolerate partially sunny locations. It's got a great set of deciduous leaves, and this is a great plant because it does not flop. Unlike some Hydrangea paniculata cultivars, they get large, and after a heavy rain, those branches can flop down and even break. This one holds up firm and upright. It's wonderful. The perennial hibiscus are shrub-like plants that enhance any summer garden because of these huge flowers that emerge every day. Now this is a cultivar called Fireball, and the red cultivars of hibiscus are indeed my favorites for the garden, and I have a number of different types in the garden. But Fireball has a unique and interesting leaf. It's finely dissected. It has kind of a burgundy colored vein on it, and these huge red flowers come out every day. Now what's unique about the perennial hibiscus is that the flower lasts indeed just one day. It usually opens very, very late at night or early in the morning before dawn, and then it stays open all day long. Then at the end of the day, it begins to close up, and by the next morning, it's all flopped down and the new flowers are open. I go out every morning and deadhead my hibiscus flowers that have gone by from the day before and show the new ones that come. Now Fireball will grow around 3 to 5 feet tall. It was an introduction as a cultivar in 2001. You might need to stake it a little bit because it can get floppy, but the more sun you give it, the more sturdy a shrub it will be. There are lots of different cultivars of hibiscus that you ought to look for: pink flowers, white flowers, and of course the red flowered cultivars. Shrubs don't have to have flowers to contribute to beautiful color in your garden. Take this plant. This is Hydrangea quercifolia Little Honey. Now we've talked about this cultivar in the past, but it's a great yellow leaf cultivar of oak leaf hydrangea. And although it produces beautiful white flowers in early to mid-May, the summer color is absolutely fantastic. And it can take a drab area in your garden and just light it up with this beautiful chartreuse or yellow leaves. Now this plant will grow very well in an eastern location where it gets morning sun, or a late afternoon kind of a sunny location. Too much sun though in a full sun location and the leaves will burn out a little bit. But this is a very versatile shrub. It grows 4 to 6 feet tall, equally as wide, and does develop an attractive fall color. But consider using foliar shrubs like this Little Honey hydrangea to add to your summer color garden. When it comes to annual color in the landscape, just about anything goes. And if you think about the color wheel, colors that are side by side on the color wheel are called analogous colors. We can often create a garden based on those colors that are near one another. Now, if you don't understand what I'm talking about, here's a garden that really demonstrates it well. Beautiful garden full of annuals and lots of color that are analogous. Take, for instance, this petunia. This is called Supertunia, and this one is called Pretty Much Picasso. A rose purple center on that trumpet-shaped flower with a chartreuse margin around the outside. Very unique and interesting, grows about a foot tall and can even cascade down over a wall. Now look at this Cosmos. Not necessarily the same color, but one not far from it on the color wheel. This is Cosmos rubenza, and it's got that wonderful textured foliage that Cosmos gives us, and these beautiful flowers that tower up over the petunias. Right next to it, a deep, rich red snapdragon. Now granted, these two colors aren't the same, but they are close, or analogous, if you will. So you can see how these all work together. Then if you look over here, you can see our classic sweet potato vine, a burgundy cultivar of sweet potato vine. And speaking of potatoes, look at the morning glory flowers. That deep, rich, dark purple that really creates an incredible contrast. If you follow that morning glory over, you can see Cerintha major purpurescens, the honeywort. Now Cerintha is unique in that it's a reseeding annual. It has a bluish green colored leaf, but if you look at the margins of the leaf, they tend to get a little bit purple. And then as that stem curls over, look at that flower, those little purple bell-shaped flowers. It's wonderful. Follow that around, there's more cosmos, and then they've added coleus to this garden with the same type of color tones as the petunias. So this is a perfect example of how you can take colors that are all close to each other on the color wheel, analogous colors, and create an incredible eye-popping garden. Now here's an example where you use two colors that are opposite each other on the color wheel, and that's called complementary colors. Classic example, lavender, purple, and yellow. And here you can see Thalictrum in the foreground, which is called lavender mist meadow rue, a herbaceous perennial, and in the background, the lovely pyramidal Metasequoia glyptostroboides ogon, the golden dawn redwood. Now let's talk about the Thalictrum, Thalictrum rocabrunianum. It's got a wild name. Lavender mist meadow rue is an herbaceous perennial, grows about 6 to 7 feet tall, and produces beautiful pinnately compound leaves with a burgundy colored stem. And then in July and August, it creates these lovely lavender rose purple flowers. Almost looks misty at the top. You can see where it gets that name. So there it is planted, and there behind it is the golden dawn redwood, that cultivar ogon. It's a redwood that grows about 50 to 60 feet tall in a beautiful pyramidal habit. It's a deciduous conifer, so those needles will turn brown and fall off in the fall. It's a great combination using those purples with the yellows and oranges. They really pop and they really add to a landscape, not only close up, but also from a distance. Ornamental grasses can be a great way to add lots of color to your garden. And there's some annual grasses that will really make that landscape pop. Now the pennisedums are a great group of grass of both perennial and annual grasses. This one right in front of me is Pennisedum fireworks. Now we might have talked about fireworks before, but check it out. It's a beautiful variegated leaf that's both burgundy and red and even some pink. Great color. And then these plumes, we call them inflorescence, a burgundy to a lighter color brown as they get older. This plant will grow about 2 feet tall and about 2 feet wide, makes a great mass planting, makes a great mixed border. It's wonderful. But keep in mind, in order to get this incredible, intense color, you've got to put it in full sun. And full sun is a minimum of 6 hours of direct sunlight. The more sun you give it, the brighter and more vibrant the color will be. Now right next to it is Pennisedum cherry sparkler. Here's a variegated leafed Pennisedum that is white and green with just a hint of pink in there. If you look real closely, you can see some of the leaves that have that pink coloration. And as those leaves emerge, it shows that color. The same burgundy to brown inflorescence, and between these two annual grasses, you can really make a strong statement in the garden. Here's an ornamental grass that'll really light up a large area in a mass planting. This is Pennisedum purpureum Tift 8. Kind of a crazy cultivar name. It has a trademark name called Vertigo. So when you look for it in the stores, ask for the Vertigo Pennisedum. Now here's a tender perennial that'll grow 3 to 5, even close to 6 feet tall, and absolutely excels in a full sun location. Look at those deep, dark, rich burgundy leaves. And if you look at that mid vein, it's even more intense with color. And so the mass of leaves really creates a dark center. Use it as a backdrop in a mixed border or in a mass planting, and this grass is a must-have for that summer garden. Now when the fall comes and the frosts start to come, it'll die back, and depending on where you are in North Carolina, it might perennialize down east, but it's certainly to be used as an annual in the central portions of North Carolina and in the mountains. Now the last grass is an herbaceous perennial called Miscanthus sinensis little zebra. And here's a 3-foot miscanthus that has a unique and interesting variegated leaf with green leaves and those yellow splotches. This will take an area and just light it up. It's a great variegation with plumes that come out, but remember, this one's a perennial, and that means that it'll come back every year. Use this in a mixed border or in a perennial border to accent and highlight that area, or even as a mass planting as you see it used here, it still makes a statement. These are just a few of the many ornamental grasses that can add color to your landscape. Well, if your garden is anything like mine, maybe you've got more shade than you have sun. And you're concerned about how do you create a lot of color in a garden that has so much shade. Well, there are lots of different kinds of plants that have unique and interesting characteristics that'll add color to your shade garden. Take, for instance, this plant. This is an herbaceous perennial, and it is called Symphytum uplandicum Axminster Gold. Now, that's a mouthful, but the common name is variegated Russian comfrey. It's an herbaceous perennial that comes up every year. Look at the huge leaves that are variegated. Green on the inside, yellow on the outside. This plant will grow about 2 feet tall and as much as 4 feet across. It really makes a statement. It would make a great specimen plant or in a mixed border in that shade location. It does produce small clusters of pink flowers that rise up above the foliage in late May and early June. But that I wouldn't really care about. For me, it's all about the foliage and the color that it exhibits in my garden. A great group of shade-tolerant herbaceous perennials are the toad lilies, or the genus Tricertus. Here's a hybrid variegated type that is a must for every garden. This is Tricertus imperial banner. Take a look at the leaves. Beautiful variegated leaves that just pop. And then the flowers. The toad lily flowers are so unique and interesting. Flower late summer and into the fall. Here's one that's kind of whitish color with purple flecks on it, a very unique and interesting flower at that. Put the two together and this plant works very, very well in the shade garden. Now remember, herbaceous perennial, it's going to start to grow up in the heat of the summer. It might look a little bit peaked. Prune it back a little bit, get it to sprout, and you can see here you've got multiple stems coming out. And with this variegated cultivar, it really presents well if it's multi-stemmed. And so this is about 2 feet tall, about 1.5 feet wide. Flowers coming, a great addition to that shade garden. So the last location you might have concern with is partially shady location and you need a ground cover. Well, there are two great groups of plants that'll work well in a partially shady location that'll do a great ground cover. First one is Ceratostigma plumbaginoides, and this cultivar is called My Love. This is the My Love plumbago. It's a ground cover that grows about 12 inches tall and spreads out, and this My Love cultivar has beautiful yellow leaves and small blue flowers in the middle of the summer, well into the fall. Use it as a ground cover or maybe as an accent plant in a mixed border down in front. It's a wonderful plant. So remember, if you've got deep shade, partial shade, or partially sunny locations, there's some great plants that you can choose that have foliage and flowers that'll help light up that landscape area. Our plant of the week was suggested to us by Dan Himes, who's the founder of Terra Nova Nurseries. And at a conference recently, he recommended this plant, and I got all excited. Continue to send in your suggestions for a plant of the week to our website or Facebook page, and if we use it on the air, we'll send you an In the Garden t-shirt. Do you need to have an herbaceous perennial for shade that has lots of color? Well, Aralia Sun King is what Dan recommended. It's an herbaceous perennial that it grows 3 to 5 feet tall in a growing season with huge yellow leaves. Even in the shade, it maintains this great yellow color. There are lots of herbaceous perennials that have yellow leaves that'll turn green if it's in too shady a location. It'll also grow in part shade or part sun to full sun. Now look at this plant. Look at how the leaves come out and they're that brilliant yellow color. It does produce a white flower late in August and early September, but that's really not why we use it. It's a great specimen plant, works great in mixed borders or even as a mass planting. It is versatile, and although you might not think it's going to fill a space very quickly, it grows quite fast. Now if you look at this, this is one leaf. It's called tripinnately compound. Look how large that one leaf is, and if you look at the back you can see how there's a support structure followed by another support structure, a third support structure, and then the leaflets. So it really makes for a huge foliar effect. It's a great plant for the North Carolina landscape from the coast to the mountains, and it holds that color all season long. It's a great plant of the week, Aralia Sun King. That's all the time we have for this week. So until next time, I'll be looking for you in the garden.
To register for In the Garden, the course, call NC State's Distance Education Program at 1-866-GO-STATE. That's 1-866-467-8283. Or log on to distance.ncsu.edu. For more information about the program or to suggest a plant of the week, go to unctv.org/inthegarden.
Funding for In the Garden is made possible through the financial contributions of viewers like you, who invite you to join them in supporting UNC TV, and by North Carolina State University. Additional funding is provided by the North Carolina Nursery and Landscape Association and the North Carolina Department of Agriculture and Consumer Services, presenting TarHeelGardening.com, your online gardening resource for North Carolina plants, professional advice, and more. And by Appalachian Naturescapes, custom landscape designs specializing in Blue Ridge native landscape themes, from intimate gardens to elaborate outdoor living spaces. AppalachianNaturescapes.com. Also by the North Carolina Sod Producers Association, representing sod growers throughout the state who produce quality turf grasses to meet a variety of residential, commercial, and recreational turf grass needs. ncsod.org.